If you enjoy these stories or this content, please join us on the Freedom from the Struggle podcast, where we'll continue our discussions on demons and spiritual warfare. You can listen every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on most podcast applications. You can also find us on YouTube and Rumble. We hope to see you soon. Chapter 12, Behind Bars. Anthony and Joshua went into the building with just a few minutes to spare. This was already the longest day of their lives, and yet the night had just begun. They quickly made it through the security checkpoint. The two followed the directions given by the deputy running the X-ray machine. Joshua took his seat in the waiting room while Anthony checked in. He then took a seat by Joshua and waited. Joshua asked, "How are you going to play this?" Anthony said, "I'm going to size him up. I believe that if he's possessed, it will show through. I want to get his story from the beginning. I want to see if there are any discrepancies. After I get his version of history, I'm going to ask for his theory. That will also be telling." "What if he lies?" Joshua doubted. Anthony assured him that he would see through it. The pastor informed him that the Holy Spirit seemed to be guiding him and that he trusted that he would continue to do so. Joshua knew that it was true, but the reality is that faith is not tangible. Joshua wished that God was just more evident on this spiritual plane. Then he remembered the miracle he just witnessed. He thanked God and pulled out his phone to check it. Anthony did the same. Before he could get too far into his emails, Anthony Corelli heard his name called. He went over to the door that was being held open for him. He went down a hallway and turned right into a small room that contained a handful of video conference telephones. This evening, Anthony was the only one in the room. The deputy gave him some brief instructions and then informed him that Mr. Stout would be on the screen shortly. Anthony picked up the receiver and then stared at the screen. Several minutes went by until he saw a deputy escorting a man to the monitor. It was Jonathan Stout. Jonathan was a short, stocky tank of a man. Whatever he lacked in height, he made up for in width. Anthony said to himself, "I pity the man who challenges this bulldog." Anthony immediately had no worries of how this businessman would protect himself in jail. He would be just fine. Then Anthony shivered at the fact that this strong man may have killed the Anderson girl. Jonathan picked up the phone and said, "Who are you, another lawyer?" Anthony realized that just about anyone could make an appointment to see an inmate, even a potential child killer. Anthony said, "No, Jonathan, I am not a lawyer. My name is Anthony Corelli, and I am a pastor who has been working with your family. I'm here to talk with you so I can not only help them, but you as well." "Is my family okay? Did you get my message?" Jonathan asked. Anthony immediately wanted to ask him about his accusation of possession. However, he had a plan and knew he had to stick to it. Anthony responded, "Well, your family is okay as they can be. I did get your message, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. We only have 10 minutes, so I would like to ask you permission to drive this conversation. I think it's life or death, so I humbly ask for your cooperation." Jonathan nodded his approval and then realized he had to speak into the phone. He obviously had no jail experience. Anthony immediately jumped in as time was of the essence. "I know they record these conversations, so let me ask you some questions and you can respond. I will try not to ask you anything incriminating. I'm not here for the criminal investigation. I'm here about the demon that is haunting your family." Jonathan again nodded and said, "Okay." Anthony said, "Briefly, tell me when the demon first showed up. What do you remember?" Jonathan spoke quickly as he knew 10 minutes would fly by. He answered, "Right after we moved to that house. I remember when I was moving a mirror from Jenna's room into the hallway. I hammered the nail into the stud in the wall. Something knocked back at me. The whole family was at the grocery store, so I was the only one in the home. It freaked me out." The pastor asked, I know this stuff progresses slowly sometimes. I'm sure there were lots of knocks and little things. When did you first sense it was evil? Jonathan said, about 2 months after we moved in, I got up to use the restroom. I opened our bedroom door because I thought I heard something. I saw Christina run down the hall and dart into Jenna's room. When I went in to tell her to go to bed, she was not there. He continued, I went into Christina's room and she was fast asleep. There is no way she could have snuck by me. It creeped me out because it was so cold in the room. I could see my breath. I knew something was very wrong. I instantly thought of her imaginary friend. Did she tell you about Yaza? Anthony confirmed that the family had all disclosed the details about the imaginary friend. Then he asked, did you ever have any conversations with the demon? This was a setup question. He knew that if Jonathan had engaged in conversations with the demon, it could have opened him up for possession. Jonathan said, well, I think so. Anthony asked him to elaborate. Jonathan continued, one night I was dreaming. This demon lady told me I was a fool for believing in Jesus. I told her to get away from me. She just laughed and said that she would never go away. She told me that I was a weak man and that she was now the head of my family. I know it was a dream, but I could have sworn it was real. Anthony asked his next guided question. Did it ever ask you to do something that you knew you shouldn't do? Jonathan answered, not that I remember. It mostly just scared us, especially when we started to see things in the house that were supernatural. This intrigued him, so he asked, can you give me an example of some of the supernatural things you are talking about? Quickly, we're running out of time. The man seemed so coherent and put together. He came across as sane and normal. His concern for his family seemed genuine. Anthony was looking hard to find out if there was a demon inside of him. Jonathan said, the thing that sticks out in my mind is the time I heard Christina talking to someone in her room. The crazy thing was, I heard someone talking back to her. At first, I thought it was her friend Melanie. I hid around the corner and tried to eavesdrop. Anthony saw the embarrassment at his admission of eavesdropping. This appeared to be a man of character. He continued, I heard Christina explaining that Melanie was her friend. The other voice spoke angrily, telling Christina to discontinue her friendship with Melanie. I decided to go in and help them resolve the conflict. As I went to walk in, the door slammed in my face. The pastor listened intently as Mr. Stout moved forward and said, I was angry that someone slammed the door in my face. I immediately flung the door open and went inside the room. The crazy thing is, there was no one else in the room. Christina was not close enough to the door to slam it. There wasn't enough time for somebody to go out the window. Besides that, her room is on the second floor. Anthony nodded his understanding. He asked his next question. Mr. Stout, are you a Christian? Jonathan answered, yes. I was saved when I was 11 years old. My family went to church every weekend growing up. Anthony wanted so badly to ask him about the alleged sexual assault. He knew he could not answer without incriminating himself. The pastor had two more questions as time was running out. He asked the first of the two, is there anything else you should tell me before we talk about your daughter? Jonathan said, yes, there's one more thing. I'm not sure how I should say it on this phone, but my family is in danger. Anthony told him to tread lightly. Jonathan shared that one day he had come home from work early. Pamela was out, and Nathan had stayed home sick from school. He had come in through the garage door and did not shut the automatic garage door. He was going to change his clothes and head back out. Because he did not shut the door, he did not alert Nathan of his presence. Jonathan heard Nathan yelling at someone in a loud and scared voice. Nathan was screaming, I won't do it! I won't do it! Get out of here! Jonathan stated that he went around the corner and started up the stairs. He could see that Nathan was in the upstairs hallway. He reported that as he slowly walked up the stairs, not wanting to embarrass Nathan, a horrific creature manifested at the top of those stairs. It was obviously there to deter Jonathan from reaching Nathan. Jonathan described the creature as having scales and wiry hair. The body of the creature was not human. The head had human-like features, like that of a deformed woman. The eyes were glowing and were full of hate. He said that he was frozen in fear. He wondered if he and Nathan would survive. He had to do something, but was unsure of what that should be. Jonathan could still hear Nathan. This time, Nathan screamed, "If I do it, will you leave us alone?" Jonathan was halfway up the stairs when he decided to scream, wanting to stop Nathan from making some irrevocable deal. Before he could make a sound, the creature dove at him and knocked him backwards. He hit his head on the landing tile and was instantly knocked unconscious. It took several minutes to form any kind of coherent thought. He believed he was unconscious for approximately 10 minutes. When he could finally sit up, he asked Nathan, "Who were you yelling at?" Nathan stated that he had not been yelling at anyone. He reported to his father that he was asleep and heard a thud. He came out of his room and saw his father on the floor. Nathan then said that he spoke to his father until he fully regained consciousness. Anthony instantly became angry, wondering why Nathan had not shared this information. Was he hiding something? Anthony's head began to spin again. He came for answers, but now all he had was more questions. He wished he had an hour to get to the bottom of this, but he was running out of time. At least he had time for one more question. He assumed his final question would shed light on his confusion. The pastor said, "We just have 3 minutes. I need you to tell me what you meant in your message. You said my little girl." Before he could finish, the door burst open and a plainclothes officer came in the room. He was followed by a deputy with sergeant bars on his shirt. The sergeant said, "You can't be here. You are both potential suspects in the Anderson case." Jonathan screamed into the phone, "She's possessed, Pastor. It wasn't me." The video feed cut off. Anthony stood there holding the receiver, staring at the black screen. The sergeant said, "You have to go, Pastor." Anthony said, "What do you mean? I am a suspect." Anthony stood in the hallway taking deep breaths. If he really thought about it, everyone was a suspect. He just hated that there was even a thought that he could have done it. Mostly, he was angry because he needed more information from Jonathan Stout. He would have a word with the detectives tonight about being removed from the suspect list. For now, where was Joshua? He decided to head over directly to the Stout home. He phoned Pamela and said that he and Joshua would be there a little early. Pamela seemed confused. She said, "I'm sorry, Pastor. I thought you said we were postponing until tomorrow." Anthony was now confused, asking, "When did I say that?" She responded, "You just called about 30 minutes ago. We talked for like 5 minutes." Anthony immediately took control of the situation. He said, "Listen to me. Don't argue and do what I say. Get the kids and go sit out on the front porch. That wasn't me that called. This thing must have something planned if it doesn't want us there. Get them out now and call me back when you are all outside. Do you understand what I just told you?" She agreed and hung up the phone. As he approached the truck, he saw Joshua. He had assumed Joshua had gone back to the truck instead of waiting in the lobby. He was right. Anthony knocked on the window to wake him up because he had the keys. Joshua did not budge. Anthony knocked a little harder. Again, no movement. The third time he knocked so hard, he almost broke the window. Still, nothing. He thought for a second and then decided to dial Joshua's number, hoping the phone would wake him up. He did not move. Anthony realized that this was the work of a demon. It had caused Joshua to fall into a deep sleep. Anthony had heard families speak of this phenomenon. He had never actually seen it himself, but he knew that this is what was happening to Joshua. Even though Joshua had the doors locked, Anthony was the kind of guy that had a magnetic hide-a-key hidden, in case he had locked his keys in the truck. Anthony retrieved the key and stuck it in the driver's door. When he opened it, the alarm immediately went off, sending poor Joshua through the roof. Anthony jumped in the truck and pushed the key fob to cancel the alarm. He started the truck and headed up the frontage road so he could jump on Interstate 25. The drive from Castle Rock to the Stouts would be about 10 minutes if he sped. If he took the back roads, he may be pulled over. The interstate seemed like the best bet. The pastor asked Joshua to describe what happened. Before Joshua could answer, the truck began to stall. His instinct was to check the gas gauge. It was more than half full. He was forced to pull over as the truck was not able to get up to speed on the freeway. Something was wrong. It was demonic. He jumped out and popped the hood. He could hear the engine misfire. He knew that this was the work of a demon. His heart sank to his feet. Something bad was going to happen. He had to get to the Stout home as soon as possible. He said a quick prayer. He needed God to intervene right now. His prayer was sincere. He knew that God's timing is always misaligned with our timing. Tonight, he needed those timelines to sync up. His phone rang as he concluded his prayer. It was Pamela. She sounded out of breath. She shouted, "Okay, we are outside. Things are going crazy in there. Sorry it took so long, but Jenna was scared. She was hiding in the closet. She has all those bug bites all over her body. She also has other bites on her. They look like human bites." Anthony told her he was on his way and asked her to be ready to run to a neighbor's house if necessary. He told her to pray and hung up. The detectives were still not scheduled to be there for another hour or so. He called Silver and told him to get there as fast as he possibly could. He was about 20 minutes away. Anthony told him, "Use that little siren, detective." Silver didn't even grumble as he hung up. The pastor looked at the engine compartment to see what he could see in the dark. He yelled for Joshua to use his cell phone light so he could do some diagnosis. A blessing from God came in that instant. Just a few weeks earlier, Anthony had changed his spark plug wires. It was still fresh in his mind. Therefore, he could see that they had been rearranged. He said, "This demon is serious." He pulled up the appropriate firing order on his cell phone. In a few minutes, the truck was back on the road. Joshua sat defeated as he apologized regretfully. Anthony explained, "No need to be sorry, my friend. This demon is working overtime. Next time you will know the signs. We are always learning. Actually, you can tell me later what actually happened. For now, call Julie and get her there as soon as possible." As they drove, Anthony explained that Jonathan had been charged by the demon and had been knocked unconscious. Joshua was unsure what that meant. Anthony explained that many people who remember the moment they were possessed say that right before they were overtaken, they were chased and caught by the demon. It was likely that Jonathan had been possessed in that moment. Joshua said, "Why does he keep saying the girl is possessed if he is the one hosting the demon?" It was a good question. Anthony was thinking when he finally said, "What bothers me is that the dad looks good, especially for a guy sitting in jail. So is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Joshua said, "You're the expert, you tell me." Expertise had nothing to do with it. He needed revelation. Anthony went on to explain all that Jonathan had said before their visit was interrupted. They compared theories as they drove. Pastor Anthony was definitely breaking many traffic laws. To this point, the demon had done things that would terrify anyone. Unfortunately, it was about to get much worse. The pastor knew the Lord was with him, but he also knew the demon had deep roots in this family. He told Joshua, "I trust God, my friend, but this is going to be a rough ride. This demon has kept us distracted, probably because it has something awful planned. This is definitely the most powerful entity I have ever encountered. I have a really bad feeling. At least it will be over soon. I'm just not sure what will happen before it's over." They pulled into the driveway and the front door was wide open. Pamela, Nathan, Jenna, and Christina were standing on the front lawn. Pamela came running to the truck and said, "The demon is going crazy in there. There are crashes and screams." Detective Silver went inside and Detective Pinjatori went around back. He scolded her. "Why did you let them go inside?" Then he realized it was a stupid question. The detectives were going to do what they were going to do. He told them to stay on the lawn. He saw Christina with that expressionless look on her face. She stared at the house as if in a trance. Nathan said, "I'm going in with you." Anthony turned to harshly decline his offer. Before he could speak, Detective Silver came flying out the front door. A loud voice echoed through the neighborhood. It said, "My house."